Well, hello there. Kim Rowe here with For the Nest and Farmhouse Paints. I am very excited about a project. I wanted to show you what I am doing, and so I am set up here with some fun things that I learned when I was down in Atlanta visiting the headquarters of Farmhouse Paint. So if you are new to Farmhouse, the paint is amazing. It is a resin-based paint, and so it comes in quarts, it comes in 8-ounce sizes, it comes in gallons, and 51 colors, I believe. And but not only do they have amazing paints, they have some really great other products, and they call them the Pro Series products. And so this one that I'm talking about today is called Crystal Fusion, and it is a Paint Pro product, and it's a clear luminous gel that is filled with a granular glass beads, and it's infused into the gel. And so that's what this is, and then it works in conjunction with the text coat. So I am going to be showing you a couple different techniques that you can use using these products, and so let's just get started. So the first one I wanted to show you, these are the samples that I've made up, and these are just on just tiles. And I thought this would be kind of a fun coaster because it dries, it's like glass, so it dries really hard, and I think it'd be a great coaster. Then I'm going to be showing you some stenciling underneath of the Crystal Fusion, and then also stenciling with the Crystal Fusion. So those are my samples. I am going to get started with the text coat. So I've mixed this up ahead of time, and what you do is you take your text coat, which is like a sand consistency, and you're going to mix 3 parts of paint to, wait a minute, you mix 3 parts of the text coat to 5 parts of paint. So basically I used a tablespoon of text coat and 5 teaspoons of paint because 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon. And so it gives you now I painted this tile ahead of time in blue, French blue, which I probably didn't need to do, but that's the color that I mixed here with the text coat. And so I'm just putting a coat over this. It covers nicely on its own. I didn't need to probably do a second coat because this is a pretty thick consistency. It's not like frosting consistency, but it is a good consistency to have pretty good coverage. So I just like to go in 2 different directions to make sure I got good coverage. And then what you're going to do, and this you can see has a little texture to it. It's like a little sand, really fine sand mixed with your paint, basically. And so I'm going to put that aside and let that dry, but I have done this ahead of time so that I have one that is already dry. And the color, I'm sitting by a window, and so it's the color, some lights it shows this beautiful French blue, other times it looks like it's white, like there. It is definitely a French blue. So we are going to be creating a fun base on top of this that we will be putting the Crystal Fusion on top of. So what I'm going to be using is, I'm just going to stamp in a design, and what I've chosen to use is this sunflower. And so I'm going to put the sunflower, and I don't have a big thing to put this on, so I'm going to, let me move this up so you can see, I'm just using a black ink, and I'm going to ink this up. And this stamp is actually going to be bigger than my tile, which is fine. It'll go off the edge, and I'll probably make it one side or the other. And you could do this with a paint. I just was using the inks, and that's how I did it, but you probably could even use a brayer and roll some of the paint on here as well. So let's see here. Oh, maybe it's going to go off a little bit, but that's okay. I'm just going to center it as much as I can and press to make the contact, and then we will remove. I like to lift one side up to make sure I got it. And okay, this is a little bit lighter, but it should work. I didn't probably didn't re-ink up my stamp, but it still's going to work. Just going to be not quite as a bold as this one was. You can see how bright, how black that stamp was, but it should work fine. So while this is drying, which won't take too long, I'm going to show you one of the other techniques that we're going to be doing with the Crystal Fusion here. So I'm going to show you, this is Rio here. It's a very beautiful green, greenish blue. And I'm going to be using a stencil, and I'm going to place the stencil over top. So this is just painted with the text coat and Rio mixed, like I showed you before. And so that's got the base coat on there. And then I'm going to line up my stencil. And what I've done here is taken the Crystal Fusion right out of the container. It's a frosting consistency. And I just put a little bit of paint into the mix. And so you really don't need much, just a tiny bit to tint your Crystal Fusion. So now what I'm going to use is I had plastic spatulas, but they're all at my shop, so I'm going to use this one, but I'm just going to be careful as I put it on here so that I don't, you know, come too hard on my my stencil and, you know, rip it or anything. So technically I would tape this down if this was on a bigger, like if you're doing this on a dresser drawer or something like that, you could, you know, tape this into its space so you don't mess it up. But I'm just going to hold it with one hand and take my Crystal Fusion and start at one end and just kind of bring it across. And it's going to sit into the details of this stencil. At first, when I first did this, I thought it wasn't going to work, but it does. I'm going to get a little bit more here. And try and hold my stencil in place. So again, just pulling this across the stencil areas. If I had another hand, I would be able to get more of this off of my spoon here. And you can do this with all different kinds of stencils. This one's kind of an intricate one. Now I'm going to lift my hand up very carefully so I can get more of this over here. And I probably should have mixed up just a little bit more, but it'll work. So just trying to get to the edges here. And once you've gotten to where you want it, you will lift this, I'll put that aside, and you will lift this straight up. And there is, so some of your Crystal Fusion is still left on the stencil. I'm going to put that aside here and show you this. So this is what I'm saying, like I didn't think it was working, and then when I removed the stencil, look at how cool that is. Now it gets even cooler, so I'm going to hit the edges there to make sure that it's nice and smooth. But once this dries, I mean, it is really cool. So wouldn't these be fun tiles for like decorative on a wall? You could do, you know, all different things with this. So we're going to let this one dry. But that is what this was, and this was with the color Waterscape. Same idea, but now it is rock hard. And you can see the raised part of that. Okay, so that's one of the ways you can use Crystal Fusion, by, again, mixing a little bit of the paint with your Crystal Fusion. Not much at all. That did not take very much at all. The other way is your text coat on the base, and I'm going to show you another thing we can do while we're waiting. That sunflower is probably dry, but I'm just going to move on to this while we're just making sure. Now this is another stencil, and I'm going to be using the liquid gold. This is the Mood Metallic paint, and so Sorry, I'm holding it upside down. And this is a beautiful, beautiful gold. If you haven't used these yet, these are incredible. They come in the gold and silver, and you can see when it dries, it's just beautiful. So I thought this is going to be beautiful on top of the Rio. And again, this base has the text coat on it. I'm going to center my the bumblebee here in the middle, and then these will just kind of go off the edge. So they won't be, they'll just be a little bit coming off the edge there, but the main guy will be in the middle. And I'm just going to take some paint onto my little stencil brush here and just stencil away. Now, the other thing I probably could have done, and I didn't, but you could mix your text coat into this paint as well. It might just make a difference when you put the Crystal Fusion on as your top coat, but I didn't do that. But I think this is going to be fine because the base in Rio has the text coat on it. So we will see how this works. But basically, I'm just stenciling away and making sure I got everything there. I just thought this gold would show up nicely on Rio. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. You always want to hold your stencil while you're doing that because you don't want it to shift. So lift, and there we go. That's the bumblebees. Let me put this aside over here. We're going to let the bumblebees dry, and then we will be adding the Crystal Fusion on top of that. So now, back to our sunflower. Let me close up my gold paint here. And let me wipe this off. So when you are using, I'm going to use the same spatula I used earlier. Now, I probably need to wipe this off, which I don't. I'm going to wipe it on my paper here. I didn't bring any of my rags up here. So let me just, because now we're going to be getting the clear Crystal Fusion. I don't want this French blue on my scraper, so I just wiped it off. So what I'm going to be doing here is just taking some of this Crystal Fusion out of here. Okay, so it looks like a white kind of consistency, but it will dry clear. And then what I'm going to do is just take my tile, and I'm going to start and just kind of get it to the edge, and then pull it across and get like a very thin coating all the way across. And then I'm going to just, now when it dries, you can kind of, I don't know if sanding is the word, but you can kind of make the edges a little bit, you know, if you need to pull off some of this at the edge. I just like to wipe it while it's still wet though. So that you don't have to worry, because it does dry quite hard, but you can remove it if you need to, like if you just need to get the edges there. So again, you're just going to continue adding this on, and it's going to look like you're covering the whole piece and you're not going to see the work that you did, but believe me, you will. It's fun. So, and then this same process I am going to do over the stencil project with the bumblebees. I may have to wait for that to dry and just have pictures of that because I don't have my dryer up here with me. But this is the same process. It just gives you a couple different ways to finish your piece, whether you stamp or stencil, or you could even freehand you know, a painting underneath of this. That would be really cool. So again, you're just going to keep moving it around. It doesn't dry super fast. In fact, this takes about 72 hours to dry. So patience will be your virtue, of your patience will be your friend in this. You have to let it dry before it's fully you know, clear. So And as it dries, you'll start to see it peeking through. Okay, and this Crystal Fusion comes in an 8-ounce size, I believe. I don't think it comes in the quart size. I will have to find that out, but the one I have here is 8 ounces. Okay, so again, you're just going to keep spreading it, and then now that the whole thing's covered, I'm going to just make a real thin, I just want it to be a real thin coverage, so I'm actually removing some now so that it's a real thin and a solid. And then I'm going to go along here to make sure the edges are nice and smooth. So there you go. Now you can't see the sunflower, but let it sit. In fact, you could even put it somewhere where you won't look at it for a couple days, and then you go and you will see it, and it will be a surprise. So there you go. That is, now I could even just smooth that out a little bit there, but it's going to dry clear. So it's hard to believe, but that is going to dry clear. So let me show you the after again. This is the same color I used. I believe I may have used Waterscape on this. It's very close though. These colors are super close. And so this was the same stamp, just a smaller tile, and then using the Crystal Fusion, just plain clear right on top of it. And what a fun look it gives you. So that is the Crystal Fusion. I hope you enjoy it. Again, here is, so this was a stencil, same thing as the Bumblebee, but I used a white background, so this was cotton white. And then stenciled, sorry, I'm losing my thing here, stenciled the Waterscape color here, and then put the Crystal Fusion over it, so it just gives it a translucent glass look over top of your stencil. So have fun with this and play around. There's so many different things you can do with this. I hope you enjoy it.